You already have it on recording. Yeah, yeah. me talking to myself. In case you're bored, you sit and talk to yourself. Tadparampariyaya vidmahi jnanalingeshwaraya dhimahi tanno guruh prachodayate om. Om Yoga Maharishi Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Puduvai Kalaimamani Puduvai Shakti Yogacharini Ammaji Meenakshi Devi Bhavanani Guru Mata Ki Jai. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. So the reason we have the computer in front of me is not just so that I feel comfortable speaking to the computer, but this evening I wish to dwell on a few topics that came up from a question of a participant in the pranayama sadhana following our Sunday session on the bandhas. So I felt that it would be good if I record it so that the others who are not here physically can benefit from an answer to that question. So that is why I'm doing this. Though it feels good. Yeah, it feels like normal. The question came out of the bandhas, and I believe that the question was from Bridget, okay. It was from Bridget, and I will just see if I can just give it its context so that we know what it is. Did it? She had sent it to both of us. Not too sure which email. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong email. Yeah, I found it. So the question is, thank you for the wonderful class on Sunday, blah, 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 blah. All that, I'm not going to read it out, I'm coming to the thing. Contemplating the granthis from Sunday's class. So we looked at the three granthis, Brahma Granthi at the base of the spine, Vishnu Granthi at the navel, and Mahadeva Rudra Granthi either at the throat or the brow center. This is what we had looked at. And she says that contemplating these granthis and the removal, using the bandhas, I was reminded of the chanting of the Pranava Om. So the use of the Pranava Om and the lotus flower in yogic symbology, and also interestingly the Polyvagal theory. So these were the concepts that came to mind when she was watching our class. She's been studying with our dear Michael the Gita, and she led her to think of the relevance of the mentions that Krishna makes of the three Gunas, Tamasika, Rajasika and Sattvika, and the progress through them in a parallel way to maybe the Granthis. So this is a very beautiful question where so many concepts come together. That's why I thought it would be a very good one to record in case I don't know what I'm saying. So I want to make sure. Also in the Nada Yoga immersion with Sangeeta, Sangeeta had talked about the chanting of the Pranava Om, the A, the O and the Ma, as also opening the Granthis, allowing the Kundalini to flow upward towards the contemplation of the divine. So the question comes, if the A, O, Ma can also work as a means like the three bandhas, and should or could this be done along with the bandhas? So can you do the bandhas with the pranava pranayama? This is now a new angle that has come in. You see how questions can be phrased. Very nice. And in respect to the polyvagal theory, now you have one more thing added to this. So we are going to have a 4-hour class tonight. One of my patients drew an image to represent all the parts of their personality. She has a dissociative disorder containing many ego states. While the image doesn't match exactly, it has made me wonder, similar to the lotus flower, where the lowest granthi could be thought as the dorso-vagal energy, the uddiyana as the sympathetic state, and the releasing of the jalandhara into the dorso-vagal state. I would be so interested in your wisdom relating to these if you have the time. Now, you know very well I find time for this because this is what I enjoy doing. So this is just the context. I thought it's a beautiful context rather than me sending her a 4-line answer or recording a voice message and sending. I thought it is a question that can be shared with all of us because so many angles came together. First angle is that the bandhas, which were our topic on Sunday, are specific techniques to energetically open the knots safely. So let us not forget that. Because otherwise what happens is we get so much things happening. The other day, Deepika asked me, she said, if we cannot get our hands around the back, can we do this? I'm like, I want to say yes, but at the same time, I'm worried that 10 years down the line, you have a new tradition where everything is done like this. And so you'll have people doing, this is how you do. So the danger in modifying is the modification becomes the tradition. And we have seen this in yoga. In a community college, I was teaching for many years, and in one of the exams, we had a student do the Brahma Mudra, and the hands were like this. And I said, I'm not going to let you pass the exam. Well, we did let him pass because we have no choice. Most of the time in exams, teachers don't have a choice. But anyway, I said, he said, well, I'm close enough. I'm like, the knuckles have to be touching. It was like this. And people didn't understand why I was getting worked up about it. The reason is it will start like this. Then a few years later, he will teach somebody who will do this. And about 10 years later, it will be this. And 20 years down the line, there will be a new tradition where you do Brahma Mudra like this. This is how mutation occurs in traditions. There is an entire dance tradition where they don't, normally in the dance, you're supposed to keep your arms stretched like this. Natya Rangam it is called. There's a tradition where they do it like this. This is how they dance. And the reason is along the way, some teacher was lazy, and this became this, and now this has become that tradition. Amma used to joke about it, that instead of a movement which comes here, they would have a movement like, and you can see where it came from. So we have to be very careful. So whenever we say there is something else, please never forget what is the first one. Doing Shirsasana without a harness is the best. Okay, Shirsasana doesn't need a harness. Today in modern yoga, if you want to do the Shirsasana, you have to buy a harness. If you want to go to a yoga class, you need a few blocks. They won't let you in without a few yoga blocks. We have come to that situation. The blocks are good for those who need it. The pillows are good for those who need it. The wheelchair is good for someone who needs it. Everybody doesn't have to go around in a wheelchair. So we need to understand the context and what is appropriate. Speaking of which, Ammaji comes in. பக்கம் வந்து வணக்கம்மா. They are all here to say namaste to you. Oh, thank you. Please sit down. So the three granthis, Brahma Granthi, Vishnu Granthi, Mahadeva Granthi, the three bandhas, Moola Bandha, Udhyana Bandha, Jalandhara Bandha, the three bandhas exist as a safe methodology to pierce through the granthis. Now the question is, can this be related to the Pranava? Can it be related to the lotus? Because the symbology of the lotus in Indian culture, which is why it is our national flower, is that the lotus begins in the muddy bottom of the lake. The beginning, the base, the anchorage of the lotus root, if you want to call it root, is into the muddy bottom of the lake. It then comes with its stem through the water from the bottom to the top of the lake, and at the top of the lake, in response to the light of the sun, opens up and flowers towards the light. This is a very important metaphor of the human journey. We come out of the base. What is that base? The Prithvi, the earth. And that is why the root has to be in the earth. Now, there are some trees who hang upside down. That's a different story. Let's not go into exceptions. Normally, a tree is to have its root, a plant is to have its root in the ground. They are geophilic. Geophilic means they go down towards the earth. Philia means to like. So geophilic. You have hydrophilic, then you have hydrophobic, geophilic, phototropic, geotropic. Geotropism is to grow towards the earth. Phototropism is to grow towards the light. It's part of the natural process of growth. Human beings, plants, animals, insects, even mosquitoes, yes. So the base of the lotus is in the earth, the slimy, swampy base of the lake, which can be equated with the tamasika guna. Hence, tamas, which is darkness. The bottom of the lake is relatively dark compared to the top of the lake. The bottom of the ocean is comparatively darker than the surface of the ocean. So the darkness, which is the absence of light. So darkness is a very interesting concept, because what is darkness? You cannot tell someone, go and put on the dark light. But you can say, it's too bright, put off the lights, I like the darkness. So putting off the light is darkness, you don't put on the darkness. This is a very important concept in the Eastern traditions. The darkness will only manifest if you switch off the light. As long as the light is there, the darkness cannot exist. The moment the sun comes up in the morning, the darkness has to give way to the light. And when the sun is not there, darkness results. So you don't have a button to bring about darkness. I'm sure scientists will find that also. Because, they always want to do everything that is abnormal, unnatural. It's part of the kick that science gets. Creating a human being. Did I share with you that People who've had a child down in Kerala. I don't know if I shared it in your group or some other group. And he was talking about something like that in USA, and this was Kerala next door. I was like, wow, good, nice. Just interesting that it came up, so I shared it. No judgment. People can do what they want, but it just seems so odd to me. Coming back, Tamasika guna is dullness, inertia. It is related to ignorance normally, because ignorance is the absence of knowledge, and light. That lizard just going to go around. Yeah, no, it's. Huh? Okay, fine. Okay, lizard, watch out. Watch out, Bukash is around, but. Said. Right. No. Speaking of Tamasika Guna. Now that lizard lost its Tamasika Guna, hence it fell down. Because tamas is the capacity to stick to where you are. And the lizard just demonstrated the absence of tamas. And so it fell down. And now it's tamasika on the floor because it's stunned. So to be stunned is another form of tamasika. The tamasika guna is related to the bottom of the lake where it is dark, it is slimy, it is sticky. There's a lot of cohesiveness. There's a lot of stick ability. Gluey, gooey stickability. Tamasika. Very difficult to move. It is the state of inertia. It is static friction. It is inertia. But from that inertia, that darkness, through the power of dynamic movement, the stem goes up through the water to the top of the lake. So the growth is occurring by a dynamic movement that is propelled by the guna called the Rajasika guna. Would you like to turn a bit so that your neck is not kinked? Yeah. I was just thinking, yes, she has a neck.
Do you want?
No, a bit. Yeah, because I think otherwise her neck is getting. Is that like if you take a little back, then. Yeah, that's it. Is this better now?
Yeah.
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 Okay. Rajasika is momentum. Rajasika is dynamism. Rajasika is growth. Rajasika is to be propelled by the desire to move, breaking all limitations. And so, from the base, from the bottom of the lake, this propulsion of the stem through the water, often it may be a very deep lake also. It is propelled to reach the top. That is the Rajasika guna. Very powerful energy, very dynamic, impetus, momentum, dynamism, heat. Because when you have that type of fast, rapid movement, you are going to go into another type of friction. You have static friction, this is dynamic friction. Static friction, we all have friction when we are sitting on the ground, but we don't know it. But if I start to crawl across this floor on my rear end, I'm really going to burn something. Huh? And then you have burnt buns, whatever. You are going to burn it. Why? Because there is that dynamic friction where the heat can just remove a skin layer. We all know that when we have a fall, that's what happens when you fall down. That happens in kitchen accidents, that happens in bathroom accidents, when we're putting on our chappals and we hit the wall instead of putting our foot into the shoes. Rajasika Guna. So Tamasika Guna was the base of the lake, Rajasika is this movement. And now the lotus has come and there is a bird on top of the water, floating on the water. And it is opening up to the light. As the light comes, the lotus opens up, like the sunflower. Swamiji had a few sunflowers on the roof at one time. And it used to be amazing in the morning, these things that looked so noodly. They looked like a wet noodle, you know. And then the sun would come up and, where did you get your spine? I thought you were a wet noodle. This is amazing. And often they would be like, you know, and then they would, amazing. Phototropism. Roots of geotropism. These are phototropic. They open up to that opening to the light, to be illumined, to have wisdom, to move from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge, from limitation to unlimitation, from the finite to the infinite. Did one more fall? You had one more fall. You guys. No, what is happening is that they are looking for the insects. They are trying to get the insects. And in trying to get the insect, they forgot they have to hold on to the ceiling. Multitasking lizards. Yeah. They're not learned multitasking yet. Hold on to the ceiling. In India, here in Tamil Nadu, we have an entire aspect of astrology that tells you good and bad depending on where the lizard falls on you. Kevin, nothing will happen. Well, the same ceiling is there. We call it Pulu Shastra. It falls on the day. It falls on the right hand, something like that. Palli Vidum Joseph. We have this Palli Vidum Palan, where there's a whole system, depending on which part, right shoulder or left shoulder, right knee or left knee, right hand, palms. It's quite they really make a thing out of it. So it tells you how common it is for a lizard to fall on you. That is so common that there's an entire system of astrology based on it. You don't have astrology based on coconuts falling on you, okay? But you have on lizards falling on you. They are totally harmless actually. As far as we are concerned, they're totally harmless. They're just, it's just a weird feeling when they fall, that's all. But they're harmless. You don't want them in food. The only time they can be nasty is if they fall into food when it's being cooked, and that can cause some digestive disorders. But otherwise, anyway, it's okay. So don't cook them. So don't cook them. And if you cook them, don't eat them. Unless you're Chinese. Chinese have immunity against everything. I don't think I could even survive eating, 1/10 of what they can eat in China. So you need special digestive enzymes. I'm sure somebody studied the digestive enzymes of Chinese compared to non-Chinese, because it would be wonderful actually to know what that is. Anyway, lizards and Chinese and astrology. Tamasika, Rajasika, Satvika, the three gunas are brought out by the lotus, and these gunas can be understood as along with the concept of ignorance, I would like to say stability. So Tamasika as ignorance is a negative trait. Let's put a positive trait, stability. Tamasika guna gives you stability. By having a firm ground to stand on, we have stability. It is pathetic the number of people, more than 5,000 who have died in the Turkey and related areas earthquake. I didn't realize, first I just read earthquake and then 5,000 people died in an earthquake over the last few days. Turkey. 17,000 was the last. 17? Oh my God. I have not got an update. I got it as 5,000. Wow. 16? I must have read today's news. Okay. It just devastated Turkey. You know, we take it for granted. We take it for granted that the earth's going to be firm, that you can build a house and it will stand, and then it doesn't. In the high Himalayas near Jyotishmat, an entire town is going down by centimeter, and everything is collapsing. Most of it is because of human developmental projects. It again comes back. Who spoils it? We human beings, but then who bears the brunt? Most probably those who had nothing to do with that developmental project. You know, if the people who are doing the developmental project got hurt by it, it's bad enough. It will be somebody who has nothing to do with it. They have to bear the brunt. When the dam bursts, it's not the makers of the dam who get flooded, it's the villagers down river. You know, we take it for granted. Tamasika guna is the stability, the nature of stability, which is important for the process of activity to come. Because if there's no stability, you cannot have activity, and activity without stability can be pathological. We often talk about growth. Cellular growth has to be regulated. Cellular growth has to be regulated to be healthy. Unregulated cellular growth is cancer. Unregulated cellular growth, rapid growth. And that is why unregulated, rapid growth without stability is dangerous physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. It doesn't matter what, and politically. Which is why Ammaji used to always tell me, I remember so many times she talked to me. She said, Ananda, you keep on doing what you are doing. People who need to know of you will know of you. You will get the awards you need. You will get the recognition you need. You will reach the people you need to reach. It can happen slow and steady. That is the normal way it happens. Not that you become an overnight YouTube sensation and then nobody knows about you because you devastated your life because you couldn't handle stardom. So many people overnight stars and then you don't hear of them. Either that or they are not there anymore. They committed suicide because it was too much for them. The necessity of stability, that is why Tamasika guna is not negative. We have got into this mindset that tamas is bad. Nobody wants Tamasika guna. Well, if you don't have Tamasika guna, you don't have stability. So there is a necessity for Tamasika guna for the sake of stability and firm rootedness. Mula bandha, Mooladhara, Tamasika guna. When we talk about Rajas, Rajas has to be activity, but it has to be channelized. It cannot be every place at the same time. That is no use. Sunlight being every place at the same time just enables you to see. But sunlight compressed into a single beam becomes a laser that is amazingly effective. Because light has got compressed into a single beam that can, of course, either save a life surgically or take a life in military warfare. The same laser. But when it is just scattered light, it can just allow you to see, but it cannot give you that power. The power of light comes from its compressed focus in a single direction. Unidirectional, single pointed focus. That is why the mind, which is all scattered, has to become one-pointed if samyama is to occur. So Rajas is good, but Rajas needs to be channelized. And then comes Sattva. So Rajas, what is Rajas? It's like the fire in the belly, navel center, fire in the belly, Udyana Bandha, Manipura, Vishnu Granthi. And coming up into the Jalandhara, that fire has to be tempered into a new level of stability. It is the calm that comes with experience. The inexperienced person, the first time something goes wrong, is like, oh my God, what to do? The experienced person is like, nothing's going to happen, just stay where you are. It will be fine. That is where the Sattva Guna comes in. Sattva comes with experience, Sattva comes with growth, Sattva comes with a new level of stability, but at a totally higher zone. From the base of the spine, you have come up into your Ajna Chakra. From Mooladhara, you have come to Ajna Chakra. You have made that huge leap across 5 centers, from 1 to 6. You have made that huge leap, a leap in consciousness. And so, externally it looks the same. Someone sleeping and somebody meditating look the same externally. But internally, the consciousness, both are altered state of consciousness. But the one is an altered state of consciousness, which is a dull state. One is an elevated state of consciousness at an altered level. The Muda, which is the dull, mud-like mind, and the Niruddha, which is the controlled mind, tranquil controlled mind, look the same because both are a straight line. But this is a straight line at the bottom, that is the straight line at the top of the graph. Straight line at the bottom of the graph is basically dead matter. Straight line at the top of the thing is the highest level of equanimous, equanimity, equilibrium, all of that. So this whole leap is occurring from Mooladhara, where you have the Brahma Granthi and you are working with the Tamasika Guna, to the Udyana, where you are working into dynamism. Remember, fly up lock. It's not just a lock, it's a fly up, Rajasika, fly, like a bird flying. You want to know what Rajasika Guna is? Watch the birds fly. You get a lot of Rajasika, especially the smaller birds. Once you get into the bigger birds, they just flap once in a while and float. That is the Sattvika. They have gone into the Sattva. And then you have the Sattva. So the Gunas can be definitely related to this. Tamasika Guna with the Brahma Granthi, the Rajasika Guna with the Vishnu Granthi, and with the Mahadeva or Rudra Granthi, the Sattvika Guna. Yes, there is a correlation. The second point was, can the Pranava be related to it? Can the Pranava be related to it? And the answer is again yes. Because what is this Akara Nada? Akara. Kara means to make. Devasena had you yesterday doing the Kara. Ha, 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 Kara. Kara means to make. Remember karma, my making, karma, my doing. Kara means to make. And Kara also means the hands, because most of the time we make with our hands. Karadrita Veena, Pustaka Pani. Goddess Saraswati has the Veena in her hands. Karadrita Veena in her hands. Karadrita Veena, Pustaka Pani. And in another hand, Pani, she has the Pustaka, she has the book. So normally she's shown having a book in one hand and in the other hand playing the Veena. Luckily she has 4 arms. So she can use the other arms for other things. And Japa in another one. She has the Japa going on. Well, it's useful when you have four arms, you can do that. But don't pray for four, right? Don't pray for four arms. Okay? Please don't. There was a woodcutter, and this woodcutter, poor guy, it's a sad story, okay? So I'm telling you now, it's a disclaimer, it has a sad ending. This woodcutter used to go to the forest every day and cut wood and come home with his wood and sell it and feed his family. And one day he was going to cut down a tree, and the fairy in the tree said, "Stop, don't do it, I'll give you whatever you want." And this guy is like, "I'm not so wise, but my wife is wiser." Okay, so he goes back home and he asks his wife, "There's this fairy who said she'll give us whatever we want. What should I ask?" And the wife said, "Well, you can do so much work with two arms, but if you had, 5 or 6 arms more, you could do so much more work and cut more wood." Be careful who you ask for suggestions, okay? So, in this case, it's a wife, but it could be the role reversal. Without being gender discriminatory, it could be a role reversal of a wife asking a husband, okay? So, doesn't matter. And she says, "If you had a few more arms, it would be better." So he goes back to the fairy and he says, "I want another 5, 6 arms." The fairy is like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "My wife said it. She knows it all." This guy has now all these arms, like one of our Indian gods. But the problem, when he comes back to the village, everybody thinks he's a demon because now, nobody has so many arms. And so they all get together and kill him. So the story has a sad ending, I told you. So be careful when you ask for extra arms, because if you are abnormal, people are not going to let you be there, because our people are not capable of understanding people who are gifted with abnormal gifts. It's a very big issue in society. So what I'm saying is, I often joke with Shanti, if she had 2 more arms, she'd be able to get so much more done in the kitchen. Saraswati, Kara. Ha, Kara. A, Kara. Coming back. Akara. Ah. You are making the sound. Ah. And where is that ah? Ah. Again, a concept that I mentioned the other day: pelvic diaphragm, respiratory diaphragm, and the vocal diaphragm. Vocal cords as a vocal diaphragm. Ah, it's the pelvic diaphragm. Ah, that's why it's not. Ah. We have to be careful because we do that. Whenever I go places and I teach them the hakara, that happen. We'll do ha. Ah! I'm like, ha. Let's try it out. Ha, 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 ha. He's like, "What happened?" They have taken my job role. He's like, "I'm losing my job. They have taken over my job. It has to be from here. Ha. Most people it comes from ha. You want that. So is down there. That's where you want to work. Similarly here. And again, coming up. See, you don't want a you don't want a ooh, and you don't want a oh, and you don't want a. You will get them. Go out and teach, and you'll get all of this. I assure you, human beings will stun you with the capability to do everything that you don't want them to do. Huh? You cannot preempt it. As a teacher, every class I try to learn something to prevent a mistake in the next one. And I keep on adding my repertoire, and there's always something new that comes up. And I'm like, seriously? Einstein made a statement. He said, there are only two things infinite in this, that I know of. He said, one is the universe and other is human stupidity. And he said, I'm not too sure about the universe, but I'm very sure. And I can understand it because, you just drive in Pondicherry and you have all been to town today. You have come back alive. Congratulations. You have passed round one of the survival test. Get to town and back without getting killed and run over. And not having, a bull chase you. These vibrations, see, when we talk of the pranava, we are talking of three levels. Low, mid, high in the chest for the respiratory system, lower part of the body, middle part of the body, upper part of the body from the body system. We are talking of the sthula sharira, the gross existence with the akara, the ukara for the subtle existence, and the makara for the causal existence. Sthula, shukshma, karana also. And at the level of your neurological development, the old brain, the the mammalian brain, the oo, and the human brain, the neocortex, So there is this beautiful journey. There is this bringing together of all the components. So yes, through the pranava sadhana can also work on these granthis. I do not deny it. But remember, the purpose of the bandhas is to deal with them directly. The pranava can enhance it. But please remember, let us not say, oh, you don't need the bandhas. Having the bandhas is useful. Now, can you bring the bandhas into it? So that when you do the you hold the mula bandha. A modified udyana, when you go, a modified jalandhara with the So yes, you can bring them together. This is where they can come together. You can contemplate them together because they are working on those three diaphragms. And then to tie into this comes the polyvagal theory. Please understand, the polyvagal theory is still a theory. Okay, there are a lot of people who doubt it, many people who say it is just hocus pocus. So please realize it is still a theory, and it's a very good theory. It's a very good theory. It is very compatible with yoga philosophy and yoga practice. But do not get stuck too much into it. I am finding now in North America, people are getting too stuck into the polyvagal theory all the time, that they want it to be the one answer to everything. And this happens with the human knowledge systems. We get something and we think it is going to be the answer to everything. Now, it's not going to be so easy, okay? But it's a nice theory. Now, what does that theory say? Polyvagal theory is based on a concept of your autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system has two wings: sympathetic, parasympathetic. And just like a bird needs to have a balance between the right and the left wing to fly normally, you need sympathovagal balance to go through life normally in a healthy, harmonious manner. Too much of sympathetic will also put you off balance. Too much of parasympathetic will also put you off balance. You need what is called sympathovagal balance. And this is where the heart rate variability, HRV, enables us to understand the sympathovagal balance through a physiological parameter. Now, the sympathetic has been always understood as fight or flight. Swamiji used to call it the 3F. He said fear. Fear, which is fright. Like when the lizard fell down, you get frightened. Fright. Oh my God. Now, that poor lizard is still immobilized there. And it's not moving. You get frightened first. So, when you are frightened, you have two options. One option is fight, the second is flight. So, fright, fight, flight, or fear, fight, flee. Different words that are used. So, it has been always understood that there is the sympathetic response which is sympathetic to your survival. This is a way to understand it. Sympathetic nervous system is sympathetic to your survival. It keeps you alive. You're walking down the Pondicherry street and there is a kamikaze truck driver coming down the middle of the road from the other direction. The sympathetic nervous system enables you to jump out of the way and save your life to live another day. Now, if your sympathetic didn't kick in, a truck would run over you, end of the story. Of course, the beginning of the story for me in trying to get your body back home. Okay? Not a pleasant job. We once had to do that. That was a tough one. Yeah. Story ended good, but it was a tough one. And we ended up with the family feeling very grateful for the work that Amma did, and hence instituting a scholarship for the young people at the city center. And Michael Dankwart scholarship came into being for many years, supporting the young kids who couldn't afford the classes to get the classes in yoga, dance, and music. So something good came out of it, but it was a tough one. I was doing my internship, and I just come out of internship actually. I just taken up my job and was presenting in a conference, the first conference where I gave a scientific presentation. And this was going on. Fight or flight is important for survival. And survival is related to your old brain, the brainstem and spinal cord. Survival is very much related to the Brahma Granthi, that is related to Mooladhara, and that is why maybe survival instinct which was triggered had people buying toilet paper. This may explain how that connection comes. Survival and is really down there. It's just down there. Now, very interestingly, I had a physiology professor. He was an amazing guy. He was the director of the hospital, and his description, he acted out the movements of a Parkinson's patient, and to this day I don't have to remember my textbook, I just remember what he did, because he brought each movement into class, and I remember how they walk in, how they walk out, how they move, how they talk. He just demonstrated it so beautifully. I don't need to go back and look at a textbook for Parkinson's. That was the type of teacher he was. He made a statement. He said, your sympathetic nervous system is very sympathetic to you, because when you are in class and I'm teaching you, even if you have to run to the toilet, you know I will not give you permission to go. And so your sphincters will hold your bladder and your bowel so that after my class you can go to the toilet and evacuate. It is a beautiful example. They are so sympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system constricts your bladder and bowel to hold until you are ready, and then it is a parasympathetic that lets you evacuate. Now, the danger is this is normal. But if you have a loaded bowel and a loaded bladder, the body says it is too tough to keep this going, and then you do it in your pants. As I say, he dashed in his pants or whatever. And you end up with that, where people evacuate. Swamiji used to say that when Arjuna had this Vishada on the Mahabharata in the Kurukshetra, and they talk of Arjuna Vishada, Swamiji said actually he had evacuated into his clothes out of that fear. That's Swamiji's version of the Bhagavad Gita, but anyway, it makes sense. Arjuna is one of those panic attacks where you don't know what would have happened. Sympathetic nervous system is necessary. Again, just like the Tamasika Guna is given a bad press, sympathetic nervous system is also given bad press, and people don't want the sympathetic nervous system. In fact, some years ago, the doctors found a new method to deal with hypertension, refractory hypertension. So, refractory hypertension means you have high blood pressure. Despite giving one drug, two drugs, three drugs, your blood pressure is still high and you are becoming a candidate for a heart attack, a stroke, or something. And they didn't know what to do. They had tried all the medication. So they did what was called renal, which is your kidney, renal artery, sympathetic nerve ablation. Ablation means to burn. They burnt the sympathetic nerves that were going to the kidneys, the renal artery, because see, blood goes through your renal artery to the kidney, and this is where your blood pressure is maintained. The organ, it's been many years, but now finally we know that the cause of hypertension, well, the whole main mechanism is in your kidneys. So if you have less blood going to your kidneys are going to say you're not getting enough, and they shoot your blood pressure up. This is actually what happens. Not enough blood going to the kidneys. Your kidneys say, I'm not getting enough blood, because they have to do your cleanup job. They are your filtering system. So they say, I need more blood, and so your heart starts to pump more, faster, higher, and it says, I'm still not getting higher, because sympathetic nerves will constrict the blood vessel. So sympathetic nerves constrict the blood vessel, so less blood is going to the kidney. So they said, if we can destroy the sympathetic nerves, renal sympathetic nerve ablation, you relax the artery, more blood is going to the kidney, and so the blood pressure starts to come down. Wonderful, sounds great. But now the problem is you have taken away a survival mechanism from that patient. And the next time that patient is in an emergency situation, the body cannot respond to it, and you have just made them a sitting duck for an emergency. Well, you don't need to do sympathetic nerve ablation, you need to do Sukha Pranayama. Sukha Pranayama of 5 minutes has the same impact a renal sympathetic nerve ablation would do. Without taking away, without disempowering that individual. The International Yoga Therapy Association, in the old definition of yoga therapy, had the word empower the individual. The new definition took it out. And I have been fighting it. I'm like, this was the most important part of yoga as a therapy. You are empowering the individual to take charge of their own health and wellness. And they said, no, empowerment, disempowerment, they have a lot of negative connotations. And so they had a committee sit around, and I have met people who were part of the committee and they tried to justify it. I'm like, that word empower, you are empowering the individual. What does modern medicine do? It disempowers the individual. You are dependent on somebody. The moment you are dependent on somebody, you have been disempowered. Yoga as a therapy empowers the individual. It says you can do something about it. Now, if the person doesn't want empowerment, you cannot do anything. Now, there are some people who want somebody to do it for them, even breathe for them. Now, once people get on a ventilator, getting them off the ventilator is the tough part. The weaning off a ventilator, very few people want to come off a ventilator, because when you're on a ventilator, you don't even have to do the work of breathing. And people are so, I'm sorry, but people are so lazy, they don't even want to do the work of breathing. It is a big difficulty. They shut down the ventilator and they see if they can get the person to do it, and the person doesn't do, then again you have to put it back. My Mridanga master, we thought he had died at that time, and he survived. In fact, I was called, I was on the way, I was in Visakhapatnam for the first year ceremony of Devsana's father, and I was going to Delhi. And I got to Delhi and I get a call that your Mridanga master is on a ventilator and he may not survive, so we're keeping you informed. Srinivasan sir phoned me. He survived quite a few years after that. But he was in ICU and he was on a ventilator, and they kept on. They had to do it 4 or 5 times to get him off the ventilator because he was so happy being on a ventilator. It's very difficult. Now, you may say, are you being a bit skeptical and cynical there? But you see it. People would be so happy if you could eat for them, if you could sleep for them. It's just amazing how lazy we can be at times. So such people, you say you can do it for yourself, they say, no, it's too tough. You know, if you were to do these practices, die, you are committing suicide. Mukesh, that's suicide. He did that the other day. He did that to me the other day and he got a whack, you know where. Mango, vanakkam. Ada. He's been removed. Sympathetic nervous system is very, very useful for survival. It is very, very useful for emergencies, but it shouldn't be your auto mode. It shouldn't be the mode in which you live. Because life is not to be catabolic. Sympathetic nervous system is catabolism. You are burning up all your resources. And that is why it is fine for a month, you can manage it. 2 months you can manage it. By the 3rd month you are burnt out. You break down and you collapse. It's called exhaustion. In the sympathetic, we have the alarm stage, where first you are alarm and you can manage. Then you go into what's called resistance. The stage of resistance is the time where you are still fighting it. And then comes a point where you're exhausted and you collapse. And that's where all the psychosomatic disorders manifest in exhaustion. The psychosomatic disorders do not manifest when you are in the alarm or even the resistance part. It's when you come into the exhaustion stage. This is what has happened with COVID. I was talking to one of our teachers who has been working with students. And she says, you know, we have been working throughout the COVID, we have been doing it and all. And just it has caught up with everyone and just everybody's collapsed. And she said, you know, she also has collapsed a bit. In family, there are some issues. It's just amazing how this can happen. You know, you can put on a brave front for one level and then at one point you just have to. That's where self-care comes in. I'm getting that lesson also. Self-care is important. So coming back, sympathetic nervous system contrasted with the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest part of your nervous system. So this is the part where once you have had that tiger attack you, you have either killed the tiger or you have run away from the tiger. Now you can go to your cave and you can recuperate. You can have an anabolic activity, build back your resources. Parasympathetic is anabolic. Sympathetic is catabolic. Sympathetic nervous system breaks down, parasympathetic builds up. That is what anabolism, catabolism is. Now, in recent times, they have come to realize the vagal, which is the parasympathetic, has 2 components. A dorsal vagal, dorsal means behind, and a ventral vagal, which means in front. So the easiest way, the vagus that is old is the back. Like the old part of your brain is in the back, the new part is in the front. This is how I remember these things, otherwise you can get very confused. So I'm sharing my tricks of memory tricks. The back will be the old, the front is the new. You know, in a shop, the new arrivals will be in the front case. The dorsal vagus, which is in the back, this is the one which pushes us into what is called immobilization. Immobilization, or going into what in psychology they call freeze. So when we talk about the sympathetic alarm reaction, physiologically we only talk of fight and flight, but psychologically we talk of freeze. that what happens is there, the challenge is so, outlandish, you don't know what to do, and you just stand there in the middle of the road like a rabbit caught in the headlights. Huh? Yeah, that lizard, it's absolutely, now it may be dead actually, for all I know, because usually they don't stay like that so long. So we have had a suicide of a lizard. Well, one thing is, in case, for all I know, it will move in 2 minutes and prove me wrong, but what we say is that if a lizard had to come to the ashram to die, most probably it's going to come into a better form the next lifetime. And so it's part of its evolutionary journey. This is the Indian attitude, that it could have died outside, why it died inside here, and why it died in the middle of a satsanga. Listening to the Gunas and the Lotus, and also it has a spiritually uplifting thought. And 10 years from now, ah, it's alive. It's just immobilized. It's just, I don't know if lizards get spinal cord dissections. That's it. He's demonstrating immobilization right now. Immobilization happens. Many people, when a challenge comes in life, they just don't know what to do and they actually freeze. And this is the old methodology of dealing with a crisis. The very primitive way to deal with a crisis was do nothing. Just stay there and do nothing and hope that the crisis will go by. We had a Prime Minister of India, Narasimha Rao. I don't know if Nilesh remembers, we had a Prime Minister, Narasimha Rao. He was the first non-Gandhi family, they're not the Gandhi family, but anyway, Gandhi Nehru family to be Prime Minister. And he brought in liberalization. The whole economic change in India came in through him. But he was very well known for doing nothing. What would happen is there would be a crisis and he would do nothing. He would just do nothing and the crisis would solve itself. It was amazing. He was an amazing, when we look back at him, in those days I remember, Narasimha Rao will do nothing and Manmohan Singh will speak nothing. That was our formula we had. We had another Prime Minister who we said he will never speak. A very nice guy, an economic genius, but we Indians are really, really nasty on our politicians. I think everybody is, but we really have a thing. Coming back. Many people, they think if I do nothing, the problem will solve itself. And 50% of the time it's going to solve itself. And so they say, I was correct. I did nothing and it solved. Why are you so worried about it? And I'm like, because I was thinking of all the permutations and combinations of what can go wrong. And you're lucky none of that happened and you survived. But what are you so upset about? And because this is why foresight is a curse. Foresight is not a blessing. Never think foresight is a blessing, it's a curse. Because most of the world doesn't have foresight. You have foresight and you will be the abnormal one, odd person out. So this reminds me in New Zealand. You had that huge bird, moa, which is as big as a cow, like an ostrich type of thing. But imagine, this like a big ostrich, but it's different. It's not an ostrich. And this moa was the biggest land bird, but it couldn't fly because it's so big, unless a cow flies. And this used to be in New Zealand before the Polynesians came. And what happened is this bird, it only had one predator, one huge eagle that used to attack it. And so this bird, which is a land bird, developed a survival strategy of standing still. Beautiful strategy. Okay, now that eagle is up there. This bird, if it stands still, looks like a bush. So this bird, the moa, thought it had developed the best survival strategy. When you see an eagle stand still, The eagle will go by, problem solved, keep moving. Now the Polynesians came in canoes. They came to New Zealand and they are chasing the bird with a spear. Now the bird only knows one way of survival: stand still, do nothing. No wonder it went extinct very soon after the Polynesians came to New Zealand. This is a story I heard when I visited the Natural Museum there in Wellington. I think there's that Natural Museum where you can go into a house and experience an earthquake. It's quite an amazing structure, and I went down with Selvin to the... Were you there when we visited it? I don't think so, but we went down and they have these huge springs in the foundation of the building because they know that there's going to be an earthquake, so they build the building in such a way. There's astonishing huge springs in the foundation so that if there's an earthquake, the springs adjust the foundation. That story of the moa comes to mind when I think of the dorso vagus. That do nothing and the problem will pass. Many people, they adapt this. So what happened is, a similar type of idea, the same idea that they have. Many people have an ostrich syndrome. They think if they put the head into the sand, everything will solve. It doesn't. You just have sand in your eyes, that's in your nose. So this is a primitive part which is immobilization. And many people go into that. We have seen it during COVID, we have seen it in crisis. It may be a personal crisis, it may be a social crisis, that people just get immobilized, they don't know what to do, and they shut down the system. This shutdown of the system can be understood as a tamasika guna. So the gunas, the tamas, and the shutting down of the immobilization of the dorso vagus can be understood this way. Now from the dorsal vagus you come through activation, which is your mobilization phase, and mobilization is your sympathetic. So you see that the dorsal vagus was the tamasika equivalent. The Rajasika equivalent is your sympathetic nervous system, but then you want to go beyond it into stability where you have a harmony, and this is your social engagement system, which is why it has to be the front, because social engagement is through our face, how we come face to face with each other and how we relate to each other face to face or on the screen in some cases, face to face on the screen. The ventral vagus is the social engagement system where you are transcending the challenge and creating a new place of ease for yourself, stability, balance, and managing the crisis rather than denying the crisis, getting burnt up by the crisis. Here you are brought into social engagement to end the crisis. How do you end a problem? By engagement. So the ventral vagus is about engaging constructively, engaging towards a harmonious balance. And this can be equated with the Satva guna. So the Tamasika guna with the dorsal vagus, sympathetic nervous system with the Rajasika, and the ventral vagus, the front vagus with the Satvika, is a very, very good way of understanding a new theory in line with the gunas. And when we work on these granthis, what is it that is blocking us? Our survival instinct. What is survival instinct? Pushing you towards immobilization. This is the dorsal vagus. How do you break through it? Moola bandha. You come into the sympathetic nervous system, which is dealing with the Rajasika manifest problems. How do you deal with it? The Uddiyana bandha which is enabling you to channelize your energy, focus your energy to deal with it. Wherever you are, do what needs to be done. Don't stop, keep moving. As they say, when you find yourself in hell, keep moving. When you find yourself in hell, keep moving, then you'll get out of it. If you stop moving, you're going to remain in hell for eternity. So when that sympathetic is where the Uddiyana is giving you that energy of flying. Fight or flight, fight. How do you get that energy to deal with the crisis? And then you come into the Satva. How do you come into the Satva? You are working on a Granthi which is here. What is this Granthi? It is the Granthi that is having both the positive and negative attributes of social engagement. You know, it is said that it is said at the throat region, Lord Shiva drinks the halahala poison. He neutralizes the poison and the poison becomes an energy of transformation. Poison in dilution is a medicine. Medicine in concentration is a poison. Where you transform the negative experience into a learning experience, and a negative experience actually becomes a learning experience and hence positive, Pratipaksha Bhavana. And where does ventral engagement come from? You have to make a choice. That is where the Ajna, the Mahadeva Granthi, working with the Jalandhara Bandha to enable the energy to move up from the spinal level to the cranial level. That's why we say cerebrospinal centers, cerebrum, spinal centers. When these are all spinal centers, the lower five. Cerebrospinal means Ajna. And at Ajna, what has happened? Through the Jalandhara Bandha, you break through the Mahadeva Granthi and you start to use your intuitive capacity to work towards ventral engagement, social engagement. The ventral vagus comes into play. So definitely, yes, I have to thank Bridget for this question, because she's made me think about how this comes together. All these concepts, the Gunas, the Granthis, the Bandhas, the Pranava, and the moving from survival mode into a living mode. Again, the same thing happens. What happens? The back of your brain, survival, limits us. If you are only focused on survival, you are very limited. But as you move from survival to the living mode, you are moving into a much more expansive aspect of your own personality. You are moving towards an expansive aspect of the social responsibility, that social engagement that they talk about. Realizing that we are not alone, we are all one. At the old brain, you think, I am alone, I am frightened. As you come forward, you realize we are all one, why should I be frightened? You have moved from duality. You are different than me and hence you are a threat to me. You are moving, we are one, we can work as a team. See, this type of movement is happening, and this is why earlier if you only had sympathetic, parasympathetic, it didn't give you that window to deal with the gunas. But the moment you have the polyvagal theory, dorsal vagus and ventral vagus, suddenly it opens up this dimension of correlation. So this, 10 years ago, we would not have had this discussion, because it's only in the last decade the polyvagal theory has really caught on and become mainstream. It's being discussed, especially in yoga circles. I think anything they talk about these days, they want the polyvagal theory. It's sort of, it's a craze. It's a craze these days. Fine. I'm going to stop there. We can have a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes of questions. So that, was that okay? Okay? Anything you want to add to it? Good. Yes. Any questions, any comments, any sharings?
So does Maslow's theory also fit in this as well?
With Maslow, I think the very beautiful part of Maslow's theory is the hierarchy of needs. is that you have to fulfill the basic needs if you want to have something higher. As they say, an army cannot march on an empty stomach. And if you are worried about will I get my salary this month, to think about spiritual evolution is going to be very difficult. If you don't know where your next meal will come, to try and have, camaraderie and gratitude and acknowledgement is going to be very tough. This is why I think it is a very beautiful understanding that you have to fulfill the basic needs step by step. And this is in tune with the Indian cultural ethos that there are four legitimate goals of life. One is you fulfill your responsibility, your dharma. They say when you fulfill your responsibility, you are entitled, though the word entitlement has its own negative connotation these days, you are entitled to prosperity when you fulfill your dharma. Now, dharma is the bedrock. I shared a book. I hope you got the email, Ingan, with Amma's e-book.
Yeah, I got some email.
Okay, fine. I'm just making sure I sent it.
Did you send it?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Fine. Okay, fine. Because there's a beautiful article. She reminded me of one of Amma's beautiful books. It's a collection of articles I put together as an e-book. Where Amma talks of dharma as the bedrock of consciousness. And it's a very good one because when you fulfill your responsibility, when you are doing what you are to do, you are then going to automatically have material prosperity. So, dharma leads to artha, material prosperity, kama, which means emotional prosperity, and moksha, which is spiritual prosperity. So, when you fulfill your dharma, so here the Indian cultural ethos calls it Chatur Purushartha. Purusha Artha. Purusha means the being, the self. Artha, well, the purpose for which you are here. And it says your purpose for being here is to fulfill your dharma, which I say, when you fulfill your responsibility, you will automatically find prosperity at the material, the emotional, and the spiritual levels. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And if you look at Maslow, if you fulfill the lower needs of safety, everybody needs safety, everybody needs food and shelter, everybody needs companionship. When this is done, you then can start to focus on self actualization. That self actualization only occurs if the other needs are met, because if the other needs are not met, this highest need of self actualization doesn't have a purpose in human life. So he has given a very nice one, and then moving beyond self actualization into self realization, which is actually the goal of yoga there, moksha. So this Chaturvida Purushartha, there is an article on, I wrote it on the yoga of responsibility, which talks about something similar to this. Because I remember many years ago coming upon Maslow's theory of the hierarchy of needs, and I felt it fitted very well into this Chaturvida Purushartha context. A very beautiful context. It's very, very funny that, three people who really come to mind often for me. One is Einstein, other is Maslow, and nowadays Antonovsky. And what is interesting, all three are Jews. It's very interesting. I don't know, maybe 2 years ago I realized it was very, very interesting that all three of them have that commonality. But Einstein, because I consider Einstein a modern rishi who came to spirituality through science. Now, not just spirituality, but through science, he realized there's something more. And Swamiji used to say that Einstein, towards the end, said that he had realized there's something faster than light, and he was talking of like a spiritual light or something that he was starting to contemplate that may be beyond, like a metaphysical concept. And Maslow, when you look at what he has created, is amazing. And of course, Antonovsky has now given me the structure for explaining what yoga is doing, especially in health and wellness, promotion of positive health. So, a lot of good stuff there. Yes.
Yeah, it was fascinating, the question with so many ingredients, how you put it together. But I was thinking of some parallel
Ah,
concepts, because this concept of immobilization that you talked about,
yes.
of course, at the physiological level, it's freeze, but at the psychological level,
Ah,
it's very much like the learned helplessness that
ah,
Seligman is talking about.
true, true.
And he's also the founder of this new positive psychology.
Ah,
And you were talking about Maslow's
yes,
self-actualization,
yes.
but this new notion that's very popular now is flourishing.
Flourishing. Ah,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
Seligman.
Eudaimonia, is it? Not the eudaimonic well-being.
Yeah, but it's
It has
a
that.
eudaimonic concept.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's not so funny that these three
Ah,
people who have created these
yes.
eudaimonic theories are Jewish, because a lot of Jews are, if you look at the cultural and intellectual elite, especially in America,
Ah,
a high percentage are Jewish.
Jewish. It's
And I discussed that with one of them, and he said, well, some of us felt that this was the safest way out
ah,
for
beautiful.
many Jewish families.
Wow.
So they would
Wow.
encourage their children to take this higher education.
Ah. This is very interesting because there is the parallel with the Brahmin community in India, and what they realize is that you are going to get blocked in most places, so go into some of these fields. And Swamiji used to actually say the Jews came out of the Brahmin community, and that he had his own theory of history. Swamiji's theories of history were very interesting. That a Brahmin got kicked out and Brahmin became Abraham. So Abraham came from a Brahmin whose wife used to wear a sari and so became Sarah. And they came from Kadalur, which is 10 kilometers away from the hospital you visited the other day. Kadalur, the city near the sea. Kadal is sea, Ur means a city or a town. Very interesting analogy. Swamiji used to say, we used to say, Swamiji, you're just making it up, and maybe he did make it up, but it's as good as any version of history as far as I'm concerned. Very, very beautiful, and I go along with this. This concept of helplessness, hopelessness, is very much part of where we are stuck often, and how to come out of that. That is where initially you have to kickstart, you have to have that movement from the dorsal parasympathetic into the sympathetic. There has to be that movement, and this is why often you will find with many people when they first take up yoga, they may have certain reactions that you'll say, oh my God, is it worsening it? Is it, is it a side effect? This is something that happens because you are actually, pushing the somebody. It's like somebody who was lying down, you have made them stand up and you're making them run. Naturally, there will be body reactions, the lactic acid will be there, they may feel breathless, there will be that. And to know whether what you are witnessing is actually a side effect, a danger, or whether it is just a sign that the person is having this transformation. Tamasika through Rajasika towards Satvika. Because Sattva can be understood also as a pinnacle of health. A pinnacle of health can also be Sattva. There are some authors who have suggested Samadhi as a state of perfect health. This is actually a very interesting concept also for another evening. So thank you for the question, Bridget, and thank you all for being here, and thank you, Deepika, for putting on the recording. Yes, it's getting recording. And before we end, a blessing from Amma. Okay. Yes. So we will end the recording at that point. I will just